get out of the basement, get out of the garage. So wherever your innovation space is, innovate there and do your building, but make sure you tie it back to the real world. If you're going to pitch competitions for money, that's the wrong reason to be going to pitch competition. It's a critical one because it was like, if we can't get this figured out, we're actually going to be out of business here.
Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered with Distillery Labs. I am Doug, your host, and with me here I have Brandon Johnson. Welcome, Brandon.
Hi, Doug. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. So for those that are listening for the first time to Unfiltered, we don't have a set structure. That's kind of part of the name of Unfiltered. We talk about things and we learn from different experiences. And so first, why don't you please introduce yourself to the audience and what you're working on?
Yeah, so I'm Brandon Johnson, co-founder of ShotHawk, where we're building a device that can engage armed robbers and active shooters.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I think we're done here. All right. Thanks for listening. So why don't we take a little bit of a step back? Because I think one of the most interesting things about entrepreneurship and building a startup is somewhat of the origin story. So where did this idea come from and when did it start?
So backstory on me, I went through a real world disaster, 2013 Washington tornado, largest tornado to ever happen in the month of November. So I already had some insider background on what an emergency response looks like.
Right. So
I grew up with childhood thinking about that. And then, we of course grew up in the time period when active shootings in schools kind of became a thing. So this was already top of mind. We had a high school, I had a high school project where we were asked to actually solve the problem. So had a lot of an operating background. After Uvalde, my now co-founder and I, we got to discussing and we were like, man, there really needs to be something done about this. And, next thing you know, we're building a device to try to mitigate the situation.
And what year was that when the building actually started?
So we started concepting and building stuff in 2022, and then we ultimately made the pivot that would eventually become ShotHawk in 2023.
And it just entrepreneurs in general, you identify a problem that has either happened to you personally or someone very close, or just something you see consistently again and again and again in society, all across a big spectrum, like major issues, small issues. You tackled a pretty audacious one.
I think we knew it was going to be hard. The stuff we thought was going to be hard ended up being the easy part, and vice versa.
Explain in a little bit more detail about like the product, because it's hardware, it's software.
Yeah. So this is a device that, mounts on a wall or ceiling, plugs into your security system, or you could have it standalone with a panic button. But basically, you plug it into some system and you can tell it there's an emergency through a panic button or whatever else you want to plug into it. And then it can engage an armed threat with a non-lethal. That non-lethal is also up to you. We're starting with initial offerings of pepper gel, an acoustic amplifier, and a light blinder.
That's amazing. And so these you mentioned the idea sort of started with school shootings, but that's not the only place this could live. It could be anywhere, public space, private space.
Yeah, the initial market we're starting in is QSR and fast food chains, particularly in the drive-thrus and quick service counters. Part of why we can't start in schools is because ultimately schools at the end of the day, they want validation and they want a stable product. So, people would kind of get a little harsh when we, tried making pivots because they would make us feel guilty and be like, oh, well, you guys can't leave your initial mission. Well, we're not leaving it. We just need to do something first before we come to our ultimate goal. And I think learning that took a little bit of growing up on our end, but, ultimately you figure out what you need to do.
Yeah. And this is a very important product you're building. However, I don't believe, is anybody on your team a full-time founder at this point?
No, we're all still part-time, whether it's a full-time job like me or school. So
juggling a lot.
It's made it intense.
Yeah. But now is the time that you should do that. When you guys you're still young and
yeah. I mean, the thing is it gets really interesting because, like you mentioned, we've got hardware, we've got software, and then we've got managing the business, and plus, of course, other random engagements. So, kind of trying to juggle all that gets very interesting because what it may appear to people publicly is, oh, well, you're not doing much. We haven't seen you in a long time. That kind of stuff. But you're building at night when people don't see you. Oftentimes, you're doing it in places where people wouldn't expect you to be. Like especially when you're dealing with the software and business plan stuff, it's a lot of time on your couch, quite frankly, trying to fix the pitch deck, trying to get meetings set up with the right customers, trying to fix all of your communication, and ultimately sometimes trying to figure out how you can just be profitable. Like I think that was one of our biggest challenges because getting the business model just right. It wasn't and we still quite frankly don't know if we have it right. We'll figure out after
Yeah.
we deploy. But
Mhm.
like, which for viewers would be in about a month or two, hopefully.
Mhm. So end of September-ish?
That's safe. We're anticipating before the end of August, but
Okay.
we'll see.
And this is 2026. So if you're listening to this in 2035 and you wanna go back in your time machine, then you can come here and be in the studio with us.
I hope people are coming back to this someday in the future because of we were a success. Otherwise, it'll be a little bit of a learning lesson like a bunch of other entrepreneurial endeavors. So
Either way, you could learn from
yeah, of
whatever
course.
becomes of Shahak.
Yeah.
All right. So let's pivot slightly. You guys are in a early, you're pre-revenue, you're getting close. What's been your greatest challenge so far?
Our greatest challenge. Our greatest challenge, I wish ultimately it is all money related because money can buy you time and resources. And those are the two things we've been lacking this whole time. Like people think, oh, you want money so you can have money. Well, you ultimately want money so you can control all the time and resources that it takes to get things done. And so from our perspective, that's where those two became really important because we started this when all of us were students. And we had like theoretically all the time in the world. We really didn't because we had classes and internships and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we were still juggling stuff then, but compared to now, it's like, wow, we had all that time. But at the same time, to do the stuff we needed to do back then, we didn't have access to the resources we needed because it took money. And so, with the whole bootstrapping thing, you work a day job, bring in the money to get stuff done, what needs to happen. You apply for grants, you do whatever you can. And so we've done a little mix of all the other stuff. We've had a love-hate relationship with pitch competition stuff. If you're going to pitch competitions for money, that's the wrong reason to be going to pitch competitions. I'm not going to stand on a soapbox forever about this. Pitch competitions are to meet people and they're for exposure. And ultimately that's what we've gotten out of them and, helped us tweak our business model and stuff.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's something a lot of our listeners can certainly relate to is this time as a resource and just timing in general. Like we need the money. It's a chicken and egg sort of thing. You got to have a full-time job to pay your bills and and that takes time away from your startup. And so finding that bridge is not easy. So if you're out there listening to this and you had felt like you're the only one that's dealing with it, you are not, my friend. Most entrepreneurs do, especially ones that are first-time founders.
Yeah, and especially it may feel like you are because, especially if you're doing the 9 to 5 thing as well, it becomes difficult because you kind of find yourself founding in a vacuum sometimes. And it's not exactly the easiest thing in the world because it's like, gosh, why do I do this? And you ask yourself that a lot. And that's why it's really important to be connected to the problem that you're trying to solve. Otherwise you'll lose the focus, lose the drive to get it done. And even when you are motivated, it can be challenging at times.
That is really good advice. Just be genuinely, passionately connected to the problem.
Like the thing is, I can't stop tornadoes from happening, so I might as well go after some other kind of emergency. So that's kind of you got to find a way to channel your energy.
Yeah. Hopefully, somebody out there is going to tackle that problem of tornadoes. Maybe
we could at least get the warnings better. That might be a little helpful. So
that is true. All right. So we talked about the kind of the early chapters of the book that's still being written with Brandon Johnson and Shahak. So your biggest challenges up to this point. Now let's talk about what are some wins that you've had. Because one thing we talk about a lot on this podcast, but just in Distillery Labs in general, is that we oftentimes don't stop to celebrate even the smallest win when we should. And so what are some that you maybe at the time you didn't really celebrate, but looking back, you're like, I didn't realize that small little thing would have this sort of impact.
Well, depending on how far back you want me to take this here, I think we had a win last year that ultimately got us to where we are today. And that win, I look back and there's two main points in recent memory when our company could have gone out of business if we didn't make certain moves. And one of them was if we didn't somehow get on the alternate list to Summerfest Tech and we didn't form the way we needed to there, I don't think we ever celebrated that win because we were in our
there's a lot going on then too.
Yeah. So like we never stopped to celebrate that one. Much more recent win though is we spent 8 months troubleshooting a very terrible software issue we had. And we finally powered through it like a couple weeks ago.
That's a pretty big one.
It was a critical one because it was like, if we can't get this figured out, we're actually going to be out of business here because of some great ingenuity on behalf of our team. We fought through it and now we're on time to deploy our first paid unit. So it's like,
congratulations.
So that win we have actually celebrated, but you asked about uncelebrated ones. I think that one a little over a year ago, we never stopped to celebrate because we had to go heads down, full speed forward, trying to get what was in front of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we get caught in that trap. We'll celebrate that later, or you just don't recognize in the moment that, wow, that looking back, that actually was a pivotal moment that you don't realize it as it's happening to you.
Yeah, sometimes moments are big enough where like you understand the gravity of the situation. Sometimes they're very subtle where it's like, I don't know how this whole thing is going to snowball. Like I ended up in New York in June because of a series of conversations that happened from one person in February.
Mm-hmm.
So the dominoes just kept falling of the string of people that I met from that one conversation. And I ended up in New York because of it.
And you probably yet to be determined on what the conversations you had in New York then might be 8 months from now.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's why we show up. Like showing up matters. If you're going to build from the basement of your home or the garage, by yourself, you're not going to have these random collisions. Hopefully not random. Hopefully there aren't random people walking through your basement when you're building.
Well,
if so, get a shot hawk.
They could be doing a haunted house. You never know. I used to build those.
Doesn't surprise me. But it really is. It's show up, go to that event, go to that pitch competition. Even if you're not pitching, just show up. Because if you're in a target-rich environment where you could meet somebody, and that somebody, it might be an investor, it might be a future co-founder, it might be a subject matter expert, it might be someone that's just going through the same struggles, just different industry, different timing that you, and now you have someone that understands you at a deeper level. You don't find that if you build in your own basement.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, part of the only reason we didn't go. So you mentioned timing earlier. Market timing is huge. We started this way too early, but part of the only reason we have the network that we have now is because we showed up. So, as the market timing is beginning to come around where, hey, our segment of the industry we're in actually has a name and we were in it for 3 years before it had a name. It's like,
what is the name?
It's automated response, I believe, is what the physical security industry has decided. But we're now taking a little bit of just early forecasting for how we're going to be projecting our business. We're more on the worker safety side now.
Okay.
So we're not as much of a physical security, but although that industry, we are involved with SIA, the Security Industry Association, in their startups program. So, we're part of the industry, but we're not necessarily leaning on, hey, we're a physical security product. It's more of a worker safety product.
Very nice.
But we integrate with physical security products. So we do need that heavy interaction there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk about the future. So where do you see ShotHawk as it stands now? What your product roadmap is? Where do you see it in about 3 to 5 years?
I would like us to be an industry standard in 5 years. That's where I'd like to be. And ultimately, I would like most of our improvements to be coming on the software side, not necessarily the hardware side. So to any founders that are listening out there, limit your hardware as much as possible. Try to make it common across as many platforms as you can. Hardware's a nightmare. With that said, I do love the hard tech space because it is so much fun. Like you get to see things in the real world. I feel like a lot of the software people I talk to, they're always jealous because they're like, oh, we don't have anything in the real world.
It is harder to tell a story, I think, unless you have something physical that you could point to.
Yeah.
Which we point to ShotHawk quite a bit in this building because one of the first, if not the first prototype in the planet was in our front lobby.
Yeah, you guys still have the original ShotHawk device sitting 2 rooms down from you, by the way.
It's amazing.
We never disassembled it. I probably should have brought it in here as a quick show and tell, but we partially disassembled it. It's kind of been Frankensteined a little bit, but we left it there as a memory because we're like, well, we can't take this thing apart.
But it does help whenever we give tours, my staff, whenever we're giving tours, when we're talking about the innovation, it makes it so much easier. We could say, you see that box that's hanging on the wall up there? Here's what it does. And it can deploy and deter in a non-lethal way active shooter situation.
Well, and you want to talk about the evolution of, products. What you guys have right now, obviously it's pre-revenue. It's an early test device. So for background for the audience, we ran a pilot program. Our device is piloting our software and early hardware configuration in the state of Illinois. And put these in schools, small businesses, kind of all over the place. And, what we did with those devices was we built them here out of Distillery Labs. And so those are the devices that you see all over the place. The first prototype we actually had, it's still in the office, just lingering around. It's always been here at Distillery. The new one that we're going to be actually bringing to a customer, that will also be built here at the distillery. But really, I suppose what I'm getting at here is our product has evolved through a lot of customer feedback, and you can't lose that feedback loop, because what you're showing people is not actually what people will actually be seeing when the device is out there in the real world, because we've had that feedback loop that we've been implementing into the hardware. And unfortunately, the iteration times, they just take a while with hardware.
Yeah.
Because you have stuff that doesn't fit. It's like, oh man, this motor didn't work, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it never ends.
No, yeah, it never ends, because even when you finally get the electrical stuff right, it's like, okay, well, now we got to adjust all the stuff. Well, now something doesn't fit.
So industry standard, 5 years from now, you're in banks, you're in convenience stores, you're in schools, you're in all city buses, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, public transport could be huge. I mean, unfortunately, we see that there's a lot of incidents on trains these days with knives. Like, that's very well in play. So something that I'm not sure I've 100% gotten you up to speed, and certainly not people that are in our audience, if any of them have talked with me or heard about our company before. We've made a pretty big pivot. So, I like talking about, what we've got on the hardware side. Hardware is very cool.
Right.
But, when we talk about leaning into the software, part of what we're doing with our device is we're allowing people to bring their own models in. So there's 30 plus companies that have weapon detection models. It would be a shame to not have the best of those be available on our device. So that's kind of where we're at. It's like, man, in order to get these across industries, we can't just try to offer ours. Like, ours is going to come, standard on the device, but hey, if they want something for a different situation, that's the only way we'll be able to accomplish our goal of bringing safety, across the spectrum here.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's a smart play.
And ultimately the reason why we had to do that is because we got our device together and we're like, man, this thing does really good in small footprint environments, but we're like, there's certain situations where it doesn't work well.
Yeah.
but we know people who have detection models that work really well in those situations. It's like, it makes perfect sense to partner up with these people, because, they're beginning to lose sales because their customers aren't getting the ROI. Because it's like, well, what is detection doing for us? And detection, great. It tells you there's a problem. Like, who wants their fire alarm to go off and, just be like, hey, there's a problem, and not actually have the fire department show up. It's like, you don't want that. I mean, even if the fire department does show up, if you didn't have fire sprinklers, it's like, you might have lost way more of the building. People might have gotten trapped because stuff fell apart quicker. Bad stuff happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're closing in on the end of this podcast. But before we go, what are some bits of advice that you would give to up and coming founders?
Always know who your customer is going to be, that's going to be paying for what you're doing. Talk to them. Don't try to innovate in this bubble. Like, yes, you can build the stuff in your basement, but get out of the basement, get out of the garage. Actually, we built a lot of stuff in kind of quasi closets. So wherever your innovation space is, just innovate there and do your building, but, make sure you tie it back to the real world.
Good advice. Don't build under the assumption that the initial idea is the best idea.
And for engineers out there, I want you to hear this one loud and clear. Do not get stuck in the innovation loop forever. Like, you need to, at some point, get some ground on what you're doing. You got to sell something.
Yeah. Is that are you referring to almost like a feature creep, to where it's or like we're waiting for perfection before we ship, as opposed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know several companies right now that are doing that.
Yeah. Just get it out there in the wild, man.
Yeah.
All right. Brandon, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. We appreciate it very much. How can people get in touch with you?
Oh, they can go to our website, of course. We've got all kinds of contact information there. So go to shothawk.ai and, you can find all of our contact information there.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on the show. And listeners, thank you for tuning in. And join us next time on Unfiltered with Distillery Labs.